Good morning. This is Dr. Morse, and this is a tutorial for MVSU Music Theory 1. And today we're going to talk about Lesson 7, okay, which in your Berklee Music Theory Book 1 book is rhythmic notation, okay? And we started reading notes last week, but we are going to back up a little bit and talk about the right way to write music, okay? And it's very important that your goal here is number one, to make your music easier to perform, okay? You want to be spending time on the music and less on the reading, okay? The performers will appreciate you. Notation problems are terrible to deal with. Now, the one question I get all the time in this lesson is, my finale program or my music notation program does all of this for me. The answer to that is yes, it does some of this for you sometimes, but I've caught it doing it incorrectly just about as much time as I've caught it doing correctly. So there is a way to train that program to do it correctly, but it takes a lot of time and you need to see what the rules are, okay? So you'll, after the end of this lesson, like you never realized there were this many rules to writing music, to writing rhythm. So the first sentence, the same rhythm can be written in different ways, okay? It's very important. Some rhythms can be written 3 or 4 different ways, and there is a correct way, believe it or not. Always try to use the simplest way, okay? That's for performers, please. I'm a performer, and I love when they write it correctly, okay? Here are your guidelines here. We're going to go over what the how the text talks about it, and then we're going to talk about my little take on it. So number one, you're going to write, it is better to use one note or rest of longer duration than to tie together 2 notes of smaller values, okay? So when I'm looking at this one right here, as a performer, I see 2 notes, you know, and I see them on the beat. And I'm always having this wonderful little thought in my head, well, why didn't they just write a half note, okay? Because a half note means the same thing, but it's easier to read and clearer. You know, there's less ink there, okay? You can see in the second one right here that the tie just kind of confuses things. You need to write it with a dot, okay? This one right here, yeah, you could read that. Not that difficult, but it's easier if you use less ink, okay? And I think I might even add that to this. Less ink is better, okay? Right here, this one, you want to write a dotted half note, okay, instead of tied quarter plus half note. Okay, that one is the easiest of the 3 guidelines to remember, okay? Number 2, thou shall not cross the line between beat 2 and beat 3, okay? So in 4/4 time, you must make beat 3 visible, okay? If it's swallowed up by a half rest here, who knows where beat 3 is? I mean, you could do it, but you have to think about it, and that is more thought that needs to go into your music, okay? So here's the correct way to write it. Think of a 4/4 measure as divided into 2 halves between beats 2 and 3. Complete each side of the measure, keeping the 3rd beat visible. Please, please, please. Same thing here. This is a little bit trickier example here, okay? You do not want to put a quarter rest there because where's beat 3? Beat 3 is contained in the second half of that quarter rest. And man, I don't know where that is. Okay, that one is a little more tricky, okay, because you might be dealing with notes that are off the beat like that, okay? Guideline number 3. Only half notes or larger can be written over the imaginary line between beats 2 and 3, but only, or it says and only if they begin on the beat, okay? There's 2 exceptions to this rule, okay? And we'll talk about in a second. So you can write these dotted half notes on beat 1, or you could write it starting on beat 2, okay? Or you can have a rest, like on the 3rd example there, okay? Now, this is tricky because there's 2 examples, there's 2 exceptions, okay? Exception number 1, you cannot do this with rests, okay? So you see how you have to write out the rests here, okay? And actually, that's an exception but it goes back to rule number 2, okay, of keeping beat 3 visible. So rule 2 will override rule 3 in this case, okay? And then the other part of that, hang on here, let me get my other sheet. The other part of this is when notes start off the beat, okay? So if they start off the beat, all bets are off. Remember, you got to keep beat 3 visible, okay? So right here, nope, okay? Because beat 3 is not visible. That's where you have to do it. So now we're going to introduce a little a term here that's going to be a reoccurring term throughout this course, and that is the word syncopation, okay? And syncopation is where notation issues happen, I would say 90% of the time, okay? Okay, so you've got your 3 rules here. Let's go over them one more time, and I'm going to tell you what you need to do for this lesson, okay? So, all right, I'm going to move my... Okay. Number 1, use longer note values when possible, okay? That's straightforward. Number 2, probably the most important rule, keep the third beat visible in 4/4 or the halfway beat in 2/4, 6/8, and anything divided into 2, okay? 2 or 4 or 8, okay? So this does not apply for 3/4. That has another set of rules, which we will talk about later. Okay, and the third rule, only half notes are larger that are on the beat can cross the halfway point. The exception is rests and if the note is off the beat. So there's 2 exceptions there, okay? So for this one, we're not doing the exercises at the end of the 3 chapters. We're going to do the ones within the chapters. So that's your first assignment, is you're going to do page 15 for me, and you'll see, excuse me, I'm mistaken about that. That's the wrong page. Here it is. It's actually page 17. It's right here. So practice rewriting these rhythms, correcting notation errors, okay? All of this is a mess if you're a performer. You don't want to read that, okay? So fix it. All right, 17, that's your first assignment. This is Dr. Morse, and this has been lecture number 7.